Well, welcome back. Thank you for watching The Matter of Life. And I'm just so delighted to be able to talk to the director and the writer of this documentary, Tracy Robinson. Tracy, what is it that made you sit down and do this?
I wanted to do this film because I was so inspired by the truth of the pro-life message. I was on the fence about the abortion issue for most of my adult life, and was very much in the mushy middle, was very apathetic about abortion because I didn't know about the truth. And when I finally did, I was doing video work for a pregnancy resource center in California. They would commission me on and off to do testimonial videos and promos for their banquets and such. I was really inspired by what they were doing for women. But like I said, I thought abortion was such a nuanced issue. And then my friends at the center invited me to an apologetics conference, and the topic was the case against abortion. And in less than 2 hours, the speaker, Alan Schleman, who's in the film, he gave a clear, concise message for the full humanity of the unborn child from the moment of conception. And the logic within that was just so clear. And he invited us to look at abortion imagery. And so I was just really struck with the truth. And I knew there were so many people in my shoes that had never heard this message before. They went to public school. They even grew up in church like I did and never heard this message. And their parents never broached the topic either. So I was pretty much immediately struck with this vision that this needed to be a feature-length documentary. And I had no idea about Roe v. Wade, didn't know the truth behind Planned Parenthood or any of that. So I just started to research, watch YouTube, read books, and I just decided, wow, I really need to take people on this journey with me. And that's where it all started.
And part of your conversion, did it have to do with personal relationships with these people? Here you were a filmmaker helping tell a story, but you also encountered these people, and I suppose your impression was that they were not terrible people.
Right. Well, the first foray that I had into that abortion is really wrong is the people I met doing video at the pregnancy center. A lot of the women that worked at the center, they've had abortions in their past and they regretted it. And that's that's why they were doing the pro-life work to help women in their situations. And then they had a Bible study that was a healing ministry that was done through the center there for people that with abortion in their past. So those were my first encounters with people with stories. I also learned about adoption as an option. I obviously knew about adoption, but just this whole option that's available in such a positive way, such a positive option. One of the first testimonies that I interviewed was a birth mom. She wasn't featured in the film, but I never knew the concept of birth mom or open adoption. Even that was I was even clueless about that kind of a thing. So yeah, to answer your question, the more people that I discovered that were doing amazing things or had a story, the more I was being inspired and the more I wanted to show this to the world.
I think the birth mom you had in the movie, in the final cut in the movie, was very powerful and very beautiful. And we need to celebrate birth moms because it's such a courageous choice to make and an honorable one, But there's often stigma. And so thank you for doing that. And thank you for doing this documentary. David, you've seen a lot of documentaries on these issues. You've done a lot of work with a lot of pregnancy care centers and maternity homes. And one of the things I think is powerful about this movie is the stories it tells, right? And the resources it highlights, and how clear things are presented. What do you think the power of this documentary is, David?
Yeah, well, thank you, Katheryn. It's an honor to be with all of you tonight. And Tracy, I just want to personally say to you, thank you for all the effort that went into creating this. I first got involved in the pro-life movement back in 1998 when Planned Parenthood opened an abortion center in the town where I used to live in Texas. And so I was thrust reluctantly into action with a local pro-life group that was formed there, and eventually took the helm of that little group. And that was where we started 40 Days for Life. And so I've now been involved in some facet of the movement for 24 years, 21 of those years on a full-time basis. And in all of that time, Katheryn, to answer your question, I've never seen the pro-life message more effectively told in a more concise package, which covers every aspect of the movement, every angle, and done in such a beautiful and compelling way where it uses story, which of course is how we reach the human heart. I wish I had had this 24 years ago. I'm just thankful that at this critical moment of time, this most opportune moment where we all recognize the urgency of the cause of life is more important than ever, we have this tool to educate not only our allies in the pro-life movement, but also to help bridge gaps and to help reach people across the aisle. So I think this is a masterful piece of work, and I hope that all of us are willing to do everything we can to get every person possible in front of this documentary and to continue to share it far and wide beyond just the theatrical showings this coming week.
Christina,
Thank you so much.
Christina, you're featured in the movie. There's a clip from you in Times Square, powerful event where we heard the sonogram, heartbeat of Abby Johnson's most recent baby. Can you just reflect for a moment on the importance of the messages in this documentary at this particular moment when we presumably are about to see the end of Roe versus Wade?
Yes. Well, if anyone has been engaging online or just even reading the news since the leaked document came from the Supreme Court, then you're well aware that people are unhinged and angry and scared because they've depended on abortion as some sort of security blanket for them if they were to face an unwanted or unplanned pregnancy. And so people are really up in arms. I've been seeing it from friends and family and people all across, my social media. And so this really is the perfect time for us to educate people. And that's what this film does. It tells stories, but it also educates them. It offers pro-life apologetics, which is so needed because I'm sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. People giving misinformation. They're talking about women that are going to die by the thousands if abortion becomes illegal. They're talking about women who are going to die because of medical reasons. And they have just such a limited understanding even as to what abortion is. And I can relate to that because I also, like Tracy was saying, I had a limited understanding myself. I grew up in Connecticut where I live now, and I had never heard abortion talked about in my home. I had never heard a positive message on the value of life. And I had never heard abortion condemned, not even in church growing up. And so I was just totally ignorant and unaware until when I was in college, when I found out that my mom had walked out of her abortion appointment with me. And that led me to do a lot of research. So I was really self-taught in that way when it comes to this movement. So this is a crucial moment when so many people are just relying on memes, they're relying on news articles, they're relying on viral videos and TikToks. And often it's just people who are very passionate, very emotional, but ignorant as to what an abortion really is, how it hurts the women that it's supposedly liberating, how it is rooted in racism and eugenics, the industry, like the film so beautifully exposes that dark side of the abortion industry, which is still, how it's flourishing today. And so in a time like this, when people are just really, they're looking for information, this film provides it. In addition, I'll say that as we see people who are up in arms and they're so upset, we also see so many pro-lifers who don't know how to respond. And they want to say something, but they don't know what to say. I've had people reaching out to me and, sending me articles or telling me, look what someone's saying to me, how do I respond to this? And so there's a lot of people out there who are being provoked by their friends' pro-abortion, viewpoints, and they want to say something back. And this is a movie that you can invite them to, and it can educate them, and then they can be better witnesses for the pro-life cause. And so it's important for those who are pro-choice so that they can have a change of heart, but also those who are pro-life who are just not as educated as they could be on this issue.
One of the questions that we've seen in the chat and the Ask the Question section is, Tracy, how do we start a conversation about this documentary, both in terms of encouraging someone who might be on the fence or someone who is pro-choice, but also after the film? If, again, somebody was on the fence, went to see it, how do you start a conversation about this and do it confidently and lovingly?
Well, first of all, they can go to matteroflife.org, learn more about the film, get tickets, invite people that are on the fence to the theatrical showing nationwide, May 16th and 17th. And I mean, like Christina said, this is a powerful tool to educate people. And I think this documentary is a great way to start that conversation, or respond if you're already having a conversation with someone. What the documentary always points to is, what is the unborn? And when you're in conversation with someone, always bring it back to that, as they said in the movie. Always humanize the unborn child. What gets lost in social media arguments and where you see pro-abortion people arguing, they neglect the humanity of the unborn child. They neglect that it's a person. So like Alan said in the film, instead of going off onto these peripheral issues and tangential subjects, just bring it back to, okay, when is it a person? When is it a life? Show a chart of fetal imagery. Show the picture of uterus or a fetus growing inside the uterus. A picture says 1,000 words. So just always bring it back to what's going on inside of the woman's body. What's happening with that life?
Katheryn, I think you're muted.
We wouldn't be doing a virtual event if someone wasn't muted.
Right.
I feel like I've done my duty. Thank you. So one of the questions that came up in the question box, and is one that we're hearing a lot about in recent days, is what about women in really tough positions? What if her life is in danger? And the media is giving the impression that women are not going to be treated if they have cancer or, you know, some kind of condition that will kill her. Well, one of the things that in representing this issue, make clear that the pro-life movement is about compassion and is actually about healthcare. And if you have cancer, if a pregnant woman has cancer, the doctors are going to treat the cancer. That's not an abortion, because you're not setting out to kill the child. The child may die in the process, but the goal is healthcare. Abortion is ideology, and we're hearing propaganda. One of the things, David, that also came up in the questions is how do we change the culture where pregnancy and children aren't seen as bad things, as burdens, right? That is part of the key of what's going on in our culture today, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, first of all, I think we all need to understand it's going to take time, and then it's going to take relationships, and it's going to take all of us doing a lot of work. You know, we've been given this moment of opportunity with the draft leaked Dobbs decision to have a national conversation. And is there a lot of anger? Yes. Is there a lot of visceral reaction? Yes, there is. And we have to understand that much of that is driven by woundedness. There are many people who have been wounded by past abortions, either directly or indirectly. And as a result, a lot of this is coming up to the surface, and it evokes a very strong reaction. So the first thing is we have to understand that it's going to take time. As I was watching the matter of life, I was thinking of people I know who are post-abortive who've not yet found healing, and thinking that they would have a very difficult time watching parts of this documentary. And so if I invite one of those people to watch this with me, I may need to take a break and have some time and allow some of this to settle in, and also just be prepared to have a dialogue. So the first thing I just wanted to say before talking about the humanity of the child is realize that as we see, whether it's disruptions happening at Catholic churches, at masses and Protestant worship services, or as we see attacks against pregnancy centers, we have to first understand that we have to respond not with anger to anger, but as Katheryn, you were saying, we have to respond with love, with compassion. That's the first thing. In the midst of this national conversation, to have a significant moment of catching our breath, praying as people of faith for those of us who are, and then responding with compassion and the love of Christ. In terms of the humanity of the child, I think that, as Tracy's done such a masterful job here, is really continuing to point people back to the humanity within the womb. That when we get pulled off, and I loved numerous times throughout the documentary where there were people who were trying to pull somebody off message to, talk about all the ills of the world and so many other things, but yes, continue to pull it back to the humanity of the child. It's not at the exclusion of the woman, but it's in addition to the health, the well-being of the woman. And so again, it's going to be a process. And that's why I think having this tool at this crucial moment is so valuable. I'm not as good as articulating this as Scott Klusendorf is. So I have Scott in this movie telling a lot of those beautiful points that he makes so well. And all of the other voices. Christina, you did an amazing job here. And as I've heard you speak and give your messages. So we as pro-lifers sometimes think we have to have all the answers. We have to know what to say. We have tools, we have resources, and this is a powerful tool to have in your tool chest to be able to share with somebody, certainly through the theatrical release, and then even as the movie becomes more widely available. So use this, put it in front of people, but when you do, understand it's not a magic bullet. Some of these things will be hard for people to accept, so give them time, love on them, and build a relationship. And then the last thought I would have is the realization of the importance of invitation. That, how do you get somebody to see this movie? You invite them. Might they reject the invitation? They might. But I'm in the pro-life movement because a young church secretary invited me to get involved in the pro-life movement. Abby Johnson left the abortion industry because a sidewalk counselor named Elizabeth invited her to leave the abortion industry. So it's a relationship that we have. We invite people to take that next step, use the great tools like this, and over time, with compassion, help the needs of those who are hurting, but also help to display clearly the humanity of the preborn child in the womb. And as we do that, we're going to see more hearts and minds change. And we're not that far away from a time where not only will Roe versus Wade be overturned, but abortion will become increasingly unthinkable in our culture.
You make such an important point, David. There's so much woundedness out there. And Tracy, you mentioned healing, post-abortion healing. One of the things, as we have this conversation, debate around the Supreme Court, and have this great visual, Tracy, that you've provided to make sure that we're up on the resources for post-abortion healing, so that women do have places to go to talk about their abortion and their pain, sometimes decades later. Christina, one of the things that came up in the questions too was, how do we relay to women, and I think this documentary helps with this, the beauty and complexity of their bodies, and what can be the great gift of fertility, right? Which is seen as a burden to sort of medicate away, right? How do you successfully approach conversations like that with young women?
Well, again, I think it does come back to education because there's such a lack of it. So I remember a woman that I talked to once who had an abortion, and she said, I grew up as a Christian, and I think to myself, why did I do that? Why did I have an abortion? And then she said, I remembered, like, when she was later in her life and she was looking back and thinking why, she remembered that Planned Parenthood had come into her high school, and they had convinced her that it was just a lump of tissue and a clump of cells. And that's what caused her to feel comfortable having the abortion, which she later on regretted. And so it's so important to show the beauty of, fetal development. One of the things that Live Action has done, which is an organization that I work for, they've done a video called Baby Olivia, and it's a really well done video, and it just shows this growing baby through every stage as she's growing in the womb. And it really helps people to see that, no, it's not just a bunch of cells, but this is a living, growing, distinct human being. And that helps them. As well, of course, in the movie, storytelling, hopeful stories, loving stories, things that get people excited. Because one of the biggest reasons that women choose to have an abortion is because of fear. And fear is just so crippling. And I know what that feels like, because I've not felt the fear of having an unwanted pregnancy, but I have dealt with anxiety for years in various different ways, whether it's flying or various things. One of the things I live by is this quote by Joyce Myers, which is "do it afraid." And so many times I'll just say, I'm going to just do this afraid. But I know for me, I've really clung on to hope, and hope has helped me to push past the fear and push past the anxiety. And so when you listen to pro-choice people or pro-abortion people talk about pregnancy, oftentimes they talk about it as if it's like a disease. They talk about it as if it's a burden, and they can say, it's oppressive, and you're forcing people to have birth. And I've even heard crazy things like, it's a parasite that's just dependent upon, its host. And they're just sucking the beauty and the life out of what should be a really wonderful stage in a woman's life. And so we have to come in the opposite spirit, like through the film and through other resources, help them to see the beauty and help them to be educated as to what's really happening in the womb. Obviously, we know that ultrasounds do that, and that's why it's a blessing. That's why we support pregnancy centers. And one of the things I love so much about this film is that it highlights the work of pregnancy centers that are under attack right now across the nation through vandalism and also legislative attacks. But it highlights that work. And when women go to pregnancy centers, they're offered free ultrasounds. And that gives them a window into the womb. And that helps them to see that it's not just tissue, but it's this beautiful growing baby. So partnering with pregnancy centers so that women can have free ultrasounds and they can actually see what's happening in the womb, educating people through this film and through other videos like the Baby Olivia video, and sharing hopeful stories can and does help people to see that this is a beautiful thing. The gift of fertility is a beautiful thing, and it's something that we should all honor and cherish.
Thank you. David, you're such a great encourager. Can you give your pitch for why people need to go see this movie, need to go bring people to see this movie and have a conversation about this documentary, The Matter of Life?
Yep. No, absolutely. I think for all of us to recognize the urgency of the moment, we don't know what the ultimate Dobbs decision will hold, right? All we know is the draft opinion that's been released. So in the midst of this moment, we're having this national conversation about abortion, and we have unprecedented opportunity to be able to reach friends, family members, people in our churches, people in our children's schools. And we need to do it in a very convincing, a very compelling, and a very compassionate way. And in my mind, that's what this documentary accomplishes. I was alluding to this earlier, that I wish I had this resource 24 years ago. Tracy, some of the things that you captured in this took me years and years, and in some cases a couple of decades, to learn myself, and yet you have it all together in one package. So what I would say for all of us is we've been equipped. And I, as a person of faith, I think we understand to whom much is given, much is required. We've been blessed to have had this experience in the screening. Is it difficult? Yes. As we see in the comments, Dr. John, God bless you, we're praying for you and others who had a difficult time watching this movie due to the circumstances that you've been through. We all need to understand that this is a moment to bring forward this important discussion. So I would just say for all of us we've been blessed to have seen this, blessed or challenged or stretched or made uncomfortable. Now it's our opportunity to share that with others. So first thing is the 2 different screening nights. whatever you can, fill the theaters, go yourself, bring other people with you. It's that personal invitation, right? So reach out to friends, reach out to people in your Bible study, reach out to people at your church, reach out to people at your workplace, and just invite them. Even if you don't know where they stand on the issue of abortion, say, this is an important national discussion that's happening right now. There's a great brand new resource that addresses this in a very even-handed, very well thought through way. And at the end of it, we'll discuss it. Whether you agree, disagree, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Invite people, get them there. That's one of the best ways we can send a message to America that we are taking seriously the pro-life conviction, is to fill those theaters. And then as people see that, then they'll want more of this and more of this to get it out there. So, if you've got a social media following, spread the word and invite people. If you've got an email list, send the word out and invite people. If you have a church directory, start calling some of your friends from church. Just invite people. It really makes all the difference in the world. I've talked to just about every national pro-life leader and many state and local pro-life leaders, and I always am asking them, how did you get involved? And it always comes back to somebody invited them to get involved. And so if you want to see who's going to be the next Christina Bennett, who's going to be the next Lila Rose, who's going to be the next Kristen Hawkins of Students for Life, or the Jeannie Mancini's The March for Life, it's going to be likely somebody that you invite. And this may be their very first step to see this movie, The Matter of Life. This may equip them, empower them, encourage them, and it may light a fire within them of commitment to say, yes, at this moment, even if Roe is overturned and abortion is sent back to the states, we have to do more than we've ever done before, because it's going to be 50 unique, different battles that are going to be happening. We're going to have to be more articulate than we've ever been. We're going to have to be more compassionate. We're going to have to provide more resources and more help and more care. This documentary is the starting point for that at this important time. So in case you can't tell, I'm fired up about it. I'm going to invite other people. I would encourage you to do the exact same thing. To whom much is given, much is required. You've now experienced the matter of life. Share it with everybody you possibly can. And let's use this moment as a way to educate more people, change more hearts and minds, and to help propel our nation, our culture forward in bringing abortion to not only the point where it's illegal, but it's also unthinkable.
I was counting on you to be fired up, David. Thank you.
I had too much caffeine.
I noticed another number of commenters saying, well, this is a movie for the choir, the pro-life choir. And I want to say something. I think one of the most important points made and there were a lot of important points made early on in the documentary. There was a man talking about, and I think it was the president of CareNet, talking about the need to make sure that in your church, you know what the resources are, that people know who to talk to. And so at this moment, asking questions about, are we completely prepared? Do we know the needs in our community? So essential. And I think that this documentary, for people who are pro-life, who are pro-life activists, who work at a pregnancy care center, whatever the situation is, or simply just vote pro-life, perhaps, all should see this movie, because I think it will be an encouragement. I think it will be a challenge. I think it'll be an education, even for people who are in the pro-life movement, and a reminder and a restart at this critical moment in history where, as David said, we need to be doing more, not less, and reaching out in love. And this documentary, Tracy, is about love. It's about service. And thank you for doing this. I'm going to give you the last word and apologize to everyone. There were so many good questions, but we want to be respectful of your time as well. Tracy, before we give this back to Lisa to close us out, and I want to thank first Christina Bennett from Live Action for joining us, David Bereit, founder of 40 Days for Life and involved in so many beautiful things, and Carmel Communications for setting this up. I'm Katheryn Lopez from the National Review Institute. Now, Tracy Robinson, the director of The Matter of Life, your last word before we go to Lisa.
Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. I know that everyone, especially you leaders and pastors out there, you have very busy lives. So I really commend you for taking the time and confronting this very difficult topic. And I know that if you spread the word about this film, if you rally your troops and your tribe to go see the movie on the 16th and 17th, that it's going to really do a lot of good to your community. It's going to not only save literally save lives and generations of people, I believe, just through the education and prevention. But it's going to touch a lot of people. It's going to empower a lot of people to confront their past. There's been people that have seen this, that have been involved in abortion in their past. They've had abortions in their past, and they become the biggest advocates for this film because they know that this film can prevent the pain and the loss and the regret that they've experienced. If we show this to young people, for instance, young adults, this can shape their worldview and prevent them from having to be in that pressure situation where they're forced to, or, they feel like abortion is their only option. And so we have a special feature at the end of the Fathom event, at the end of the theatrical event, where we talk to Annie Tang Humphrey of Save the Storks, and she shares her healing journey when she decided to share her story, or to confront her story in her own life, in her own past. That was a tremendous healing journey for her when she finally started to feel free to talk about it. And she shared with me that pre-screening this documentary was the first step in her actually sharing her testimony to a women's conference.
Wow.
And women came up to her that had abortions 50 years ago and never told anybody. And so this is really, I believe this film, don't be afraid to tell people that that have had abortions, to graciously, with help with prayer and the Holy Spirit, to graciously tell them about this film. And so, and secondly, the last thing I'll say is use this film. I know you all are leaders in your community, particularly in the pregnancy help world. And so I want to encourage you to use this film to bring more people in on what you're doing, to inspire more people in your church to come alongside and support your pregnancy center, for instance. So I just really pray and hope that it blesses you.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you.
And I think we're going to go to Lisa Wheeler for the final word here.
Well, thank you. Just echoing what Katheryn said, thank all of you for being here this evening. A lot of you have had questions about how to see the film. First, why it's only in theaters for 2 nights. The answer to that question is because it is a Fathom release. So this is an event opportunity. It's the film plus what Tracy just alluded to, this added value feature piece that'll be part of the event presentation in theaters for 2 nights. If it's not showing at a particular theater, you can request it. So just go through we've posted within the chat the link to both group tickets as well as to the regular Fathom tickets. There's also a green bar at the bottom of your screen that you can just click on to get right to the events page. And if it's not showing in a particular theater, go through the form process, and they will do what they can to have the film brought to that theater if it's in any of the major circuits like Regal, Cinemark, AMC. So we just encourage you to post on Facebook. I mean, David gave kind of the best ending for us in terms of a call to action. Post on your Facebook pages, post on Instagram, send out emails. We have been completely shut down through social media in doing any sort of advertising for this film. The Matter of Life page has been taken offline by the social media engines out there at times. So we just really need kind of the hands and feet of the movement to rise up right now and let people know that this film is in theaters next week for 2 nights. And that's all that we really are asking for from all of you, to just spread the word. So thank you very much for your support and for being here. And we're just going to band together to use this for this time in this moment to help educate people. So thanks for being here.